Hello, everyone. My name is Siddharth, and welcome to another special episode of interviews at Quick Learn in Sports. Today, we have a pioneer for rugby in India. I'm talking about Mr. Paul Walsh. Paul Walsh is a well-respected figure in Indian rugby, known for his dedication to rugby development. He is recognized for his work with Jungle Crows Rugby Club and the Khelo Rugby Initiative. In 2004, Mr. Walsh co-founded the Jungle Crows in Kolkata, and around 2010, he started Khelo Rugby to introduce the sport to the Indian community. You can learn more about him in a movie called Jungle Cry. And now let's begin this conversation with Mr. Paul Walsh. Hello, Mr. Paul. How are you doing today, sir?
Hi, yeah, I'm all good, all good. Looking forward to chatting a little bit.
Thank you very much. And I'm really excited and honored to be speaking with you because you have done great work. I've seen the movie Jungle Cry like in 2023, and it was really great. But before talking about the movie, I want to know why rugby? Because you're coming from a place where football is the biggest and the, most favorite sport. And how come you get attached to rugby?
So I think, I was born and brought up. Actually, I was born in England.
Yeah.
My parents were both Irish, and
Oh.
I grew up in Wales. So I'm kind of real proper
Hmm.
British person. Um, and rugby is a huge part of kind of British life.
Right.
Um, although it's a sport that isn't well known across India,
Right.
it is in the UK. It's
Yeah.
probably the second most popular sport. If you think of soccer, football,
Yeah.
nothing can compare with the reach of soccer from every level. Everybody's familiar with English Premiership.
Hmm.
I'm a Liverpool supporter.
Hmm.
Um, so everybody knows that. Across the world, every country you go to, you'll find somebody that supports Man United, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea.
Right.
And that support for football goes absolutely to grassroots level as well. You know, where I grew up on a Sunday morning, there'd be loads of kids playing,
Yeah.
lots of teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely football is the god of sports. Um, but rugby is also very popular in the UK, hugely popular, and it's a great sort of grassroots sport. It's we have the I think it's the oldest sort of sporting event in the
Hmm.
world. This sort of tournament. It's called the Six Nations. It used to be it's had different iterations, but it's now known as the Six Nations. And in that tournament is England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Italy and France, and they play a round robin tournament each year, and it's huge, hugely followed, um, huge packed stadiums,
Right.
and quite interestingly, as a kind of India connection, the annual England Scotland match each year.
Hmm.
1 year it's played in London, 1 year it's played in Edinburgh. In each capital hosts it 1 year. It's played for the Calcutta Cup.
Oh, wow. That's
So you
interesting.
imagine, so it's kind of, and that cup actually came from Calcutta more than 100 years ago, and is one
Wow.
of the oldest kind of international cups that are played for in the world,
Right.
and it's each year between England and Scotland, and so there's a real kind of connection to rugby, to India, to Calcutta, where I came to live 20 years ago. So yeah, rugby is really, really popular.
Yeah.
You know, where I grew up, everybody started playing as a youth, as a
Hmm.
excuse me, as a child. Played in school, and that's where I played mostly, is in school. Just school
Interesting.
rugby
Yeah.
is really, really
Yeah.
popular. You go off once a week to play a different school.
Right.
Um, Now I think about how good or bad it was. It probably wasn't of a very good, wasn't definitely wasn't of a very good standard, but it was good fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing about, then you grow out of games a little bit. You get a job, you get a career.
Yeah.
But when I came to Calcutta, I discovered there was this kind of amazing rugby culture. So
Hmm.
that's I came full circle back to a game I'd loved as a young person.
So interesting fact that you mentioned about the Calcutta Cup, and even I am not aware, or a lot of Indians are not aware of this fact. Excuse me. So when you came to Calcutta, you said there was a interesting rugby culture evolving there. So what sparked you to start this Khelo Rugby initiative? Like, I'm obviously coming down to the main question right now, but like, what were the day-to-day activities happening in your life? I'm sure you were working in the embassy, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened? Like, all of a sudden, you thought to leave the job and then, start this initiative.
Well, it wasn't sort of suddenly, but I came to Calcutta as a British diplomat, as you
Yeah,
mentioned. Um, and what I found here was that Calcutta has this amazing sporting culture.
right.
And so, I went to meet my bank manager. Can you imagine? I had to go and open a bank account, and I
Mm,
was taken into the bank by one of my colleagues. And you're a British diplomat, so the manager kind of brings you into his office for a cup of tea,
mm,
and and he said, "Oh, are you interested in football?" So I went, and he said, because he said, I'm a football supporter. Why don't you come to a football match with me? So, like, within a few weeks of living in Calcutta, I
mm.
was going off to East Bengal Mohun Bagan Derby.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was like this crazy
Yeah,
football kind of experience that I'd experienced a kind of huge support for a football match
right.
in UK,
UK,
but
yeah.
I kind of never realized that Calcutta had such a massive sporting sort of community. So there's 100,000 people packed into Salt Lake Stadium,
Yeah.
you know, cheering and shouting for Mohun Bagan and East Bengal. Um, I kind of, where our office is, the British High Commission office is in in Calcutta, is not far from the race course. So you've got the kind of race course just around the corner. So you see that.
Yeah.
I was interested to golf. I'd sort of played a little bit of golf, but there's like a great golfing culture in Calcutta. And it's got this amazing sort of sporting culture across the city with people at, every part of society
Right.
have some kind of sport they're interested in, whether it's, playing sort of cricket on the Maidan,
Yeah.
it's playing at the highest level of football. There's the oldest kind of golf club. And everything in between. There's rowing, there's kabaddi. You go on the Maidan, you'll find people playing volleyball. So then I discovered that I'd not really realized it before I came, that there's this rugby culture as well.
Hmm.
And particularly around one of the classic old kind of clubs called Calcutta Cricket and Football Club. And I was invited by somebody, let's go and watch the rugby. And I kind of didn't think much about it. And I thought, okay, we'll go and watch the rugby. So one Saturday afternoon went in the monsoon. So it's kind of a steamy afternoon in Calcutta. If you've been to Calcutta, all that sort of that
A bit.
steamy typical monsoon,
Yeah.
heavy rain, you're sort of wading a little bit through muddy puddles. And then you come on this beautiful green space that you had never seen before, and there's these guys playing rugby, and it was just men, only men playing rugby, and watched a couple of games over a few weeks. And sort of one of the teams that was playing was a team called Future Hope, which
Hmm.
is where I'm sitting today. I'm sitting in Future Hope today. And they had this team of street kids, and they were sort of inspiring, really, because they had taken that game and made it a catalyst for change amongst those children. They'd identified that rugby was a game that these youngsters could excel at, that
Right.
they could fall in love with, that was a little bit special to themselves. And so I was really, over a course of perhaps 1 or 2 years, I was sort of inspired by that example of how rugby could be a real kind of game changer.
Right.
And so got more. So in 2004, we started this kind of slightly crazy rugby club called the Jungle
Hmm.
Crows,
Hmm.
which is a kind of whole other story in itself.
Yeah.
People ask me how that name came about, and I remember very clearly how it came about, and I'll share that with you just for a couple of minutes, if that's all right. And it's, if you go around the world,
Yeah.
even in India, you have rugby clubs called the Cheetahs, you have the Rhinos. There's a club,
Hmm.
in fact, probably yes, for sure, the best rugby team club in India currently is a team from Delhi called the Hurricanes.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, so you have all these names, and I thought, well, that's not Calcutta for you. We're not lions, we're not tigers, we're not
Hmm.
cheetahs. But
Hmm.
what's the animal that is incredible in the city is the crow.
Okay.
It kind of works together. It has this attitude, it has a bit of an attitude. It's always everywhere in the city. You can always hear the crow. It's kind of always there. It works out how to get things done. It's quite ruthless in its own way. Crows are one of the few animals
Yeah.
that will attack itself, its own kind. So it sort of just seemed to me as a really good sort of kind of concept for how we could call the club Jungle Crows. How it was this kind of group of survivors, group of people that could get things done, whatever the circumstances. And
Mhm.
that's like Calcutta in a way. It's got this kind of people are very resilient. People have overcome all sorts of difficulties, and the city keeps moving. The city keeps
Yeah.
buzzing. It's real kind of nice attitude, nice atmosphere here. So it just seemed like a natural kind of fit for a rugby club in the city of Joy.
So you mentioned such interesting story about the Jungle Crow Foundation, and even people can learn more about uh, this concept from the movie Jungle Cry, right? So
Absolutely.
tell me about that journey when you started this foundation, right? And when you went out and scouted players, created the club, how were the challenges? I'm sure there must be a lot of challenges because uh, I mean, I also see amongst our community, like to tell or to make them aware like why sports is important. It becomes a challenge to get those people together. So I just want to understand, how did you overcome those first? What were the challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think at first it was kind of quite easy. We just decided we wanted to play rugby. We decided we wanted to play this game. We kind of brought a group of young people, mainly young people together to play. And it was easy. You get that odd shaped ball out, you
Yeah.
start throwing it around, people love it, people are excited by it. And so that's how we started, really. And I was working in the High Commission at the time.
Hmm.
Um, so in fact, to start with, we took a bunch of my colleagues. So
Right.
a few drivers, a few security guards, a few people who worked in the office, went down to the Maidan just across the road, threw the rugby ball around just for fun. And everybody's kind of keen to learn something new, to be involved in something that's a bit different. There was no sort of, it was kind of easy, you
Okay.
know. And so it sort of grew from there. It was very sort of organic. As we were playing, a few kids would wander over. Oh, can
Mm.
we have a go? Can we have a play? Do you
Yeah.
mind if we enjoy, this game also? And so you kind of you it just grew like that. And you can imagine, you're playing on the Maidan, perhaps 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sort of really the sort of young people, children who are around at that time, perhaps haven't gone to school that day. Perhaps they haven't they're not really
Right.
interested in school. They're just sort of hanging around, waiting to go home and not be told off. So we ended up with this kind of group of kind of quite mixed
Hmm.
um people, children, and that's really where it grew from. That's where the sort of Jungle Crows grew from. That's how our rugby club grew. And it was really kind of just grabbing different groups of people who perhaps couldn't find themselves a team, who didn't know the sport. Nobody knew the sport at first. I can remember the struggle. The biggest struggle was finding a rugby ball in the city. That was the biggest struggle at first. Was like, okay, let's try and have a rugby team, but where will we find a rugby ball? And we kind of scrimped and scraped and found ourselves a couple of rugby balls. And that's really where it all came from. And it wasn't, didn't have any great worthy aim.
Hmm.
There wasn't any kind of great sort of theory behind it. It was
Right.
just to have a bit of fun.
It
And
was
that's easy.
basically organically
Yeah,
done.
and that's an easy thing to do if you can make something fun. If
Hmm.
you can make it fun for the person who's organizing it, fun for the people who are involved, fun for the people who are playing, then that's the best place to start, I'd say.
Right. I mean, because one of the challenges that I see, maybe Kolkata and that part of India is very much aware of sports, so it's easy. But here, I see that sports is still not a big culture, right? Like you say, it's a big culture there. So here it's a sort of a challenge, and then there are some financial constraints that I see. So that's why I wanted to understand more about those challenges. But it's great, like if it's organic, if it is happening on its own, you just have to collect them and start a club. That was very that was probably easy. But again, my question will be now, rugby is a, like you were not able to find the balls, right? Rugby ball. So that is also one sort of a challenge to create awareness about that sport, which is not available in the Indian society. So now after like 20 years, 20 odd years, I see there are a lot of awareness on the rugby. So how did you create a platform to make people aware about the sport and sort of grow it organically within the different parts of the country?
So for me, one of the kind of what one of the things that made it created this kind of bigger movement. Now we kind of talk about Khelo Rugby. We have this project called Khelo Rugby. I talk about it often with people as it's like a movement. So when you have a movement, when you have something that is organically grown,
Right,
it's about just directing it. It's not
right.
about banging a drum,
Hmm.
saying, "Oh,
Hmm.
please come and play rugby."
Hmm.
It's word of mouth. It's kids within their communities. It's that they're all attracted to it.
Right.
So, and Keller Rugby has an interesting start. So this was back in 2009, 2010.
Hmm.
And one of our senior players, a couple of our senior players were, oh, we love playing, we're enjoying playing, but how can we give something back to our community? How can we give
Hmm.
something back to the kids that around where we live? So sorry, I'm just going to stop for a minute. You
Sure.
can give me 10 minutes, half an hour. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Sorry. I told you I'd get interrupted.
That's fine. That's fine.
So I was just talking about Keller Rugby. So we started, and it was really literally for Keller Rugby, it was a group of players that said, look, we want to give something back
Yeah.
to the place where we're from.
Yeah.
The little communities that we stay in. And they were talking about, they didn't have an idea of how they would do that. And
Hmm.
I, at that time, we've got this rugby team, we play a bit of rugby, what can we do?
Hmm.
And so we kind of came up with this idea, why don't you go and teach those kids rugby
Hmm.
and see how they enjoy the game,
Hmm.
take that game and take it into where they live, into the Basti.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. So we had a group of kids, group of older boys and girls who would take a rugby ball into where they were from and they'd throw that rugby ball around. And it's not playing kind of hard contact. Imagine a
Yeah.
lot of people think about rugby tackling and
Yeah.
pushing each other and pushing each other on the ground and hitting each other. It was just taking that rugby ball out and just throwing it around with a group of children who got excited, who
Right.
got interested in it. You're doing it in a safe way.
Yeah.
And so over the years, that became a very important thing for those children. And then from those children, they sort of self-select themselves. Some are more interested in it than others. Some want to play to a higher level. And so now we have an academy this is a 20-year
Yeah.
journey. We have an academy.
Yeah.
We operate, if a youngster wants to play to a higher level, they get that opportunity. They can be supported in that journey. But we still, each week, some coaches will go and throw a rugby round in a rough piece of ground and just engage the children in that way.
Interesting.
And that's where it all starts. That's the catalyst of just taking that rugby ball, giving a youngster a chance to play, have some fun. And I think that's the key. I
Yeah.
suppose that's the key with all sort of
True.
grassroots movements.
Yeah.
there has to be there has to be something that attracts the kids. There has to be some catalyst. You
Yeah.
know, attracts kids, attracts adults, but there has to be some catalyst that keeps people engaged. I suppose politicians understand this better than anybody because they create these movements.
Right.
Um, but that's really where how Kello kind of
Interesting.
started and how it's grown. And it's not that I can't, it's a sort of thing. I think for any sort of sporting kind of growth, you can't force people to do it.
Right. Right.
Can't just be high performance. Okay, we're going to teach. You can take a group of people and say, okay, you're going to learn this game. You're going to be good at this game. We'll exclude everything else. You'll just focus on this. But I had no power to do anything like that.
That's true.
I mean, perhaps if you run some sort of boarding school or you have that sort of organization that can pay for those to be doing only that, then you can do that. But that's not where we came from. We came from a place where the young people who were playing had to be motivated themselves. And that's still true to this day, that if we don't motivate the kids, and it becomes a challenge because and it goes as a graph, you have huge motivation, and then something will happen, a group of kids will grow up, will move away, and you feel your kind of your
Mm,
motivation, it goes down a bit. And then you suddenly realize, okay, we need to figure this out again. We need to relook at it. We need to build that graph up. And that's how it's been all these years. It's just,
interesting.
it goes up on a high. We have some key events each year. So we have this winter camp, which engages thousands of children. It is a real motivator for the coaches because they all love it. They all love working
Yeah.
on it. They plan it. They make it happen. So you need some key events that will give everybody that ambition, that desire to
Yeah.
be engaged. But you also need, for a grassroots movement to be successful, it needs to be something that is a kind of motivator,
Yeah.
is attractive, and it's trying to avoid that it's not a transaction. It's trying to
Right.
avoid a
Right.
transaction
Yeah.
because that.
Yeah, I think I got the gist of this, that this grassroots movement is full of joy. It's not like you have to be a professional, you have to, make a earning out of it, and it has to be pure joy. There is no, such forced any compulsion in it. So I think I like that very much, because when I see a lot of professional people and clubs and everything, I see there is a lot of pressure in it, right? And pressure is good. I mean, includes, it gets you the good results and quality players and everything. But when you are starting from a standpoint of joy, it makes things quite positive and quite calming, I guess. So, really interesting insight that you gave. But moving on to the point, since you are like 20 years already, and you have created so many movements, so many players, what was the point when you realized, okay, this is the great professional story? Like, there's one player which is coming out of uh, your movement, and he or she represented at the nationals, internationals level. And if you can share one or two stories which were really powerful for this movement as well.
So I think the first sort of story of a youngster who did very well
Yeah,
was, we had a, a youngster called Tudu,
to
and
do.
he was like wandering across the Maidan, came to play,
Mm,
picked up the rugby ball, got involved, was kind of playing with us, and just by chance there was a India under 18
hmm,
rugby camp.
hmm,
So these had not happened for very long. So there's this camp, and I'm like, hear about this. Oh, is there any youngster that you can send to that camp? And we sent two or three youngsters along,
right.
16, 17-year-olds. And this boy, Tudu, was one of those guys. And so a couple of them didn't do so well, kind of dropped
Hmm,
out. But he sort of stuck with it. And he didn't really know the game that well. I
hmm,
remember we played a tournament earlier that year, and he didn't, we'd sort of forgotten to teach him how to score. So he was very quick. He carried the ball really well. And then when he got to where you're supposed to score in a game of rugby, he didn't actually know how to score. And we were like,
right,
oh, we've kind of missed out the vital aspect of his training, is
right,
how to actually score points,
right.
which was quite funny. But he went to that camp. And so it was not long, I can't remember exactly the year, but not 1 or 2 years after we'd started, and he got selected to play for India.
Oh, wow.
It was like an amazing thing because it sort of, you could see that all the other young people that were around,
Mm-hmm.
involved in the club at the time, in the organization, they were excited by that. And getting that sort of, and he still plays rugby today.
Right,
He's just come back from the national championships in Uttarakhand, the national games,
right,
played in that. He now is a player for CCFC, plays for our arch rivals in Calcutta. That's okay. He's had the chance to go and study in the UK.
mm-hmm.
And he's still from that kind of
Right,
very I suppose humble beginning where he was
mm,
learning the game. He's now this kind of catalyst and role model for so many kids, and so many kids would
Interesting.
credit his story with inspiring them to play. And he would have been their first coach, perhaps, because he started doing a lot of coaching. He would have been their first role model. And so we have a number of stories of young people like that. I think on your podcast, you've had Akash.
Akash, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so Akash Balmiki, we just had the national games again. Akash got injured, couldn't go
Mm,
to the national games, and it affected. I mean, it's interesting. It actually affected the team
right,
because he like 4 or 5 guys who were in that team that just went to the national championships or the national games in Uttarakhand just now
right, right.
were coached by him. They'd grown
Oh,
up learning the game from him, and they were like devastated. Akash was our coach. How can we go without Akash? He was our kind of leader. He's our mentor, and they were terribly disappointed by the fact that he got an ankle injury, couldn't go, wasn't selected to go in the squad because of that injury. And it actually psychologically, now we have performance rugby. We have to think about the psychology, and we have to think about the training. That it affected that team's performance.
Hmm,
So that was interesting. So you've got kids like Akash who are here. There's another youngster who is like a legend in Calcutta rugby called Tiger Sarfraz. He was one of these youngsters who, school classic sort of story of a Jungle Cruise kid, school dropout, but very athletic, very, very. Once he found rugby, he became very driven, very ambitious, played at a very high level, played for India, really enjoyed his rugby. In a way, he kind of came of age as a best player when Indian rugby wasn't playing so many internationals. So he didn't get many chances to play for the national team, but he was a great star and he's still around. He comes back, he lives in Bangalore.
hmm,
One of our challenges is, I suppose, that there's kind of fewer opportunities for a young person to in their life in
right.
a city such as Calcutta. We have that as a real challenge within a sort of, if you think about a senior team, a performance group, which, now it's not just thinking about the kids playing and having fun. We're also thinking about rugby performance.
Yeah.
Akash manages our performance actually. So he's in that side of things. He's got great skills, played in the USA,
Hmm,
been around, he's traveled with the India team, been under very good South African coaches, worked with very good Fijian coaches. So he's got that kind of knowledge and skills, knows much more about rugby than I ever will or ever have done. I have to listen to him in everything. But that's one of the challenges is children will move away. They get more, there's more
right,
job opportunities
right.
in Bangalore,
Yeah,
Delhi. So that's a challenge.
that's a challenge, and I'm sure you will be able to figure out with people, great people like Akash and other players. So, moving on to the challenges part, I'm sure there is a plan where you are working on providing them a professional career or a goal to the kids because joy is fine and game is fine, sports is fine, hobby is fine, but at the end of the day, they have to make a living. So, do you have any ideas? Like you want to share some of the ideas that you're already working on and people are already getting benefited with this approach or with this plan?
So I think for us, for Keller Rugby as a project today,
Yeah.
there's a couple of main kind of priorities. Yeah, we want to play the game and have fun. That's there. That's
Yes. Core. That's a core.
the core. But then we also understand, and experience has shown us that one of the key issues is education.
Right.
So, it's okay to play.
Yeah.
It's okay to be interested in a game, to have that ambition, to have that motivation. But at the end of the day, every youngster needs to do as best they can in education. And so that's one of the things that we really focus on is trying to ensure that everybody does as best they can in education, whether that means making sure they pass class 10,
Yeah.
making sure they have the opportunity to go to class 12, making sure they have the opportunity to go to college or university.
Yeah.
So we work on that. That's like a huge priority for us. So we offer some scholarships for children at school, for
Right.
children to go to university who wouldn't normally get the chance. And the children that we work with are those sort of children that perhaps nobody in their family has ever passed class 10.
Hmm.
that
Got it.
nobody in their family has ever had the chance to go to university.
Right.
So most of the children that we work with would come from that sort of a background, that they wouldn't have had those opportunities. So that education kind of area is
Right.
vitally important.
Right. And
Just deal with
that's
children. Children. Sorry.
no problem. No problem. So I think that's great. Education is very important, and probably there is, I mean, that's probably helping the kids and the community to grow. And I hope more and more people get aligned to this vision with you, with the Khelo Rugby initiative, and they grow further. Another interesting point that I want to ask is, which is the best pocket when you talk about rugby? Like, which is the best region in India where you have seen great players, like natural talents? I'm sure Odisha is one, but is there any other place that you think that there can be great rugby players from India?
I think North,
Oh, really?
Haryana.
Okay.
Haryana is now the national games champions, I think, for the last 5 editions.
Okay.
So Haryana has this kind of size, it has this athleticism. I think there's a culture of kind of being interested in sports,
Yeah.
in being interested in kind of pursuits. Obviously there's some games that are natural, that are
Right.
very popular there, like
Kabaddi.
wrestling,
Yeah.
kabaddi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have that kind of within the
Wrestling.
culture, it's really kind of important. So you see that if you look at the India team,
Yeah.
and the youngsters from Delhi, Haryana, I think they sort of merge into one a little bit, is very is they bring this kind of size, because at
Right.
international level you have to have that size,
Right.
and they have that determination and skill and kind of single-minded focus that probably more than any region. And then you see that some regions are doing really well because of the way they've organized it. So I'd say that probably in my experience, Orissa is one such region. Odisha has
Yeah.
created this incredible sporting kind of
Culture.
infrastructure,
Yeah.
this kind of incredible sporting culture. And I like to think that, if you watch Jungle Cry, the movie, then
Yeah.
we had a little kind of catalyst towards that. I kind of like to think that we did in that victory from 2007 when those
Yeah.
kids went to the UK, won the tournament, came back, were kind of that particularly Dr. Samantha at KISS, he saw that the value and the change that game could bring. And now if you go to Odisha,
Yeah.
they play everything to a high standard. These have these amazing infrastructure, they have these incredible facilities. Their women's rugby
Yeah. Yeah.
has again won the national games for the past 3 or 4 editions. So they've got
Wow.
this kind of incredible program, very difficult to compete with. And it's that whole infrastructure
Right.
that, they all get if you win the national games gold medal, you get a government job,
Yeah.
play for
That's
India, you
that's a good
get,
incentive.
and I guess it's that. And what they've done very well is that I think that some people feel that can be a kind of can be is a two-edged sword. Can be
Yeah.
very, very can give a kind of real boost to a kind of kind of sporting culture, but it can also, it can destroy a culture because, of course,
Hmm.
once you get that job, you
Yeah.
kind of you've made it. And of course,
Hmm.
that's not, you don't want a young person to, especially if they're still playing their sport to a high level. You don't necessarily want them to think they've just made it. You want them to carry on and have
Right.
that
Right.
ambition, desire.
Right. So that it evolves further, they become the world champion, things like that. I
Exactly,
mean, you have to
exactly,
think beyond that job, right?
exactly. So that's the challenge for those places that give a good. I have the challenge that how do I keep sustaining kind of youngsters as they get older, and they have the challenge that now we've got this system of sustaining them, but how do we
Hmm.
keep them motivated?
Right.
So it's a kind of two
Yeah.
sides of the same coin.
Very
And I
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, I look at a state like Maharashtra have done
Hmm.
incredible work in rugby. They've got the best, without question, the most comprehensive state coverage of the game,
Okay.
which has been really exciting and kind of incredible to see, actually, that they went from having perhaps one or two clubs. Maharashtra was always one of the centres of rugby. Bombay Gymkhana were a rugby club. They play rugby there, very high standard of rugby. They host a national tournament each year. And it's been incredible to see how they have, a group of leaders within Maharashtra Rugby have said, okay, we have this incredible traditional club, but we also know that to make the game popular, to produce the champions of the future, we need to push it out. And they have, their national game squad. I saw their national game squad, and there's youngsters from every corner of Maharashtra coming into that squad. And that's really, really good to see that they've really cracked that,
Yeah.
making the game open to everybody. They have a great relationship with some of the universities there. They have a great relationship with the state government, really showing the value of that game. So there's these different models.
Right.
And in a way, Bengal, and I can see it now, we're sort of playing catch up now. Whereas once, perhaps,
Oh,
if you came to me um, a few years ago, when we were getting lots of youngsters in the national team, we're now on one of our little bit of a downward spiral, and we
downwards.
need to
Yeah.
figure out how we get back to be competing at the national level. And it's a
Right.
challenge because we don't have that kind of government job
Yeah.
scenario. We
Yeah.
don't have the engagement. University sport has become an incredible thing in the last few years. I don't know whether the
Yeah.
podcast has that, but the Khelo India movement for young people's
Yeah.
sport, for university sport,
Yeah.
is become this incredible catalyst
Yeah.
for practicing, because that's the other thing. You don't get so many tournaments,
Yeah.
so it's important that you have tournaments, that the kids have competition, that they can aim for something. There's no point just training, because
Yeah.
that's not motivating for anybody.
Yeah, I think there has to be. I think Khelo India is a good project, I guess. It has given a lot of a motivation to young players and even in the people in the sports fraternity. So it's a great project. But I guess, like you said, that job security is, I mean, I'm still stuck to that point that when you say that job security has been a limiting factor, sort of. So even I would be really interesting to understand like how we can make our players think beyond the job security aspect and make them, competing at the world level. So that will be one of the challenge that I really,
And I think you see that mostly in football.
yeah,
It's very. You sometimes look at India football, which has got thousands upon thousands of young people, children
yeah,
playing, has got technical expertise coming into the country, the setting up of academies,
yeah,
um, and yet it's not resulted in international performance.
yes,
So
yes,
it's an interesting conundrum. It's a
yeah,
complex challenge,
yeah,
and so it will be cracked. It will be
yeah.
cracked.
With time,
I'm
yeah,
not sure just throwing resources at it is quite the way to crack it,
right,
but it will be cracked. I mean, the work that's going on in Mumbai, City Group,
yeah,
Reliance. You
yeah,
see, there's an amazing football academy I once visited in Orissa. Um, you know, Bengal is full of football
yeah,
academy. Um, but it's still, the stars. There's been a couple of stars,
yeah,
but no, but still India is sort of, and I suppose the trouble is that every country in the world is trying to make its football better. So you've got to figure out how you can
yeah,
swim ahead rather than just take the step. And everybody's taking the step.
yeah.
So it's and that's again, you could argue that, a India player becomes comfortable, gets an ISL contract,
Yeah.
and that player thinks he's made it. I mean,
Again,
that's that challenge, isn't it? That's the
that's a
government job, if you
challenge.
like. I've got an ISL contract. You haven't made it yet, but that's perhaps is a mindset. There's at that level, it's
Yeah.
not only just about technical ambitions and technical knowledge. There's also this kind of mental game.
Mindset, yeah, exactly. I think we have to build such players with a mindset of playing at the international levels, at the highest standards, and make it as a continuation, not just because you have made it and you don't need to do anything. It has to be a continuous process. Then only the game will evolve. Then only the culture will evolve. That's very interesting insight and feedback from you. I'm sure a lot of people miss it out. I mean, I never thought about this because I am in the sporting community for a very long time, but I never realized this point. So thank you very much for sharing this great insight. Moving on, I think we are almost at the end, and I would like to wrap it up now. Last, any interesting suggestion or feedback or any plan that you would like to share about Khelo Rugby and how you want to further speed it up or accelerate it to a next level?
I don't have any great insights or kind of knowledge, but I think that, generally, we love, sometimes there's challenges, of course, but we
Yes,
love Hello Rugby. We love that movement. We love that kind of ambition. We want more kids to pick up a rugby ball. That's really what we're about,
right,
is that, yeah, we want to do performance at that best level. We want to do as well as we can. But really, Keller Rugby is about getting as many children as is possible to pick up a rugby ball and have fun and enjoy the game. And I think that that is, that's real grassroots sport, is making
right.
sure that whatever the game is, that children have the chance to play,
Yeah,
children have the chance to a little bit of competition,
yeah,
uh, that they can have that ambition, that motivation, that they can have a rugby ball and they can play with it. And that's, a lot of the kids, they talk to me and that's their ambition, is that yeah, we have young people who want to play for India. We have young people who are determined, who have that performance idea. But really getting, and I think that may be the trick, the secret for India's sporting success, and its model for the future is to get everybody giving the chance to play, whatever the sport is, whether it's football, rugby. And I think team sports are great. I think they have an extra edge. When you're
right.
playing with your mates, there's nothing like it.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that's that grassroots, making it so that everybody has the chance. There's great. I think there's amazing sports work around the country. I see this Brahmaputra Volleyball League,
yeah,
incredible. I've seen, there's so many amazing Anantapur Sports Academy. I was just
yeah,
watching a video on them last week.
yeah,
And we have some co-funders in common. So, I see the professional leagues. I think there's a place, and absolutely, we're going to have a rugby. Can imagine in June, first
okay.
2 weeks of June, you have to cover this. We will have a rugby professional league in India. The
Wow.
best players from around the world, the best players from around the world, the best
Uh,
coaches from around the world will come here to play. The challenge for that is how they connect that to development of the game in the country. There's a challenge. It's okay to spend a lot of money to bring the best players in, the best coaches here, but you have to make sure there's a connection
right.
to the next generation of Indian players coming through.
True, true.
So yeah, I'm excited for I think that I started this kind of journey in rugby 20 years ago. I've like watched Indian sports through that time, and I think there's an incredible opportunity for Indian sports, all sports. India, can become a real powerhouse. It's already, doing so well. It's doing well in grassroots. It's on the cusp, I'd say, of doing
Yeah,
well in sort of performance sports. And it's great to be a part of that. We have I'm sitting in Future Hope, working with kids in a school, working with the Keller Rugby project. We have kids who are doing performance cycling. We have kids who are doing, playing
yeah.
tennis. We have kids. I've just come from rowing this morning, so watching youngsters row. So there's this kind of breadth of
Yeah.
opportunity, and we
It's
just got to work to make sure that we're kind of doing well in all of them.
yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that it's not just limited to cricket. Earlier it was just the
We have a
cricket.
cricket team also, but
But it's great to see that people are taking up different sports and making them a career or mainstream sports. And like you said, we are at the cusp. I'm sure there are a few stories. We are just short of few stories. Like once we got Neeraj Chopra in javelin, now we have so
yeah,
many people in javelin. So, and
exactly. They
athletics.
just came onto our rugby field last week to
Oh,
practice,
wow.
and I had to kind of say, please don't start throwing javelins here.
So I think that's great. I'm looking forward to hear more stories, more great stories coming from rugby, and of course we'll be happy to cover the sporting event in June. It will be really great to see the different international players and Indian players competing at that event. And I would like to thank you very much for your time and sharing such great insights to us. And I'm really glad that I have this time to talk to you. It was a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.